Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm delighted to be joined with one of my favorites to talk about women's football, probably one of your favorites as well, a veteran on the channel. It's Phil O'Connor. Phil, how are you doing?
Mariam, I'm all the better for talking to you here. It's been a busy time as we're talking. It's just the end of the Champions League group stages before Christmas time. It's been busy, but what a great year it's been for women's football and for Canadian football, for Irish women's football, but also for Mariam, and she scores bangers. And I have to say, you're my MVP this year on the YouTube front, my sister. And I want to congratulate you for every
Thank you.
success that you've had and wish you every, even more so for 2024 before we even get started.
Before we that is an honor for you to say. I'm very glad that you think of that. And like you mentioned, it's been a big year for a lot of women's soccer, Canadian women's soccer, like you mentioned, in some areas. But today we're not talking about Norwegian women's soccer, like some of you guys have assumed. We're talking about the Irish women's national team and the girls in green and what a fantastic year that they have had. But it hasn't always been this glamorous. It hasn't always been this rainbow and beautiful time of wins and W's and Casey McCabe scoring bangers because not so long ago, 2017, they had threatened the Federation to not play a few of the friendlies that were happening at the time because of the treatment. And some of the players spoke about how they had to change getting ready for games at airport toilets. They had to hand back their kits that were too oversized, and they were basically treated like, I mean, in their words, it was fifth class citizens. So not so long ago, I mean, we were talking about a team that was essentially not going to play friendly because of the horrid treatment that was happening behind closed doors. We have come a very far way from 2017 up to now. How has that been? Or I guess this could have gone a lot worse than what it went on to happen for the next few years for the Irish women's national team.
Yeah, it could have got a lot worse. It could have got a lot better too, right? So, I mean, what we really have here is not necessarily just one episode of your brilliant podcast. This is actually a Hollywood movie that we could make out of
Yes.
this particular story. I was only just before I was talking to you this evening, I was thinking back over, this is one of those things that I find it hard to approach as a journalist because I'm an Irish man. I grew up in Dublin. My first 28 years of my life were spent there with a little period living in Greece. And Ireland was a very different country then, Mariam. Okay. So
Mm.
when I was a teenager, when I was the age that you are now, or a little bit younger than you are now, women didn't play sport. Okay. The girls that, we didn't go to mixed schools. It was a very Catholic country, a very segregated country that way. We weren't encouraged to hang around with girls. In fact, we were told not even to walk past the girls' school, high school on the way home, right? So girls didn't have any of the sporting opportunities that we had, right? None of them. The first women's international that the Republic of Ireland ever played happened in my lifetime, and I'm ashamed of that fact. It wasn't my fault, right? But it happened when I was about 2 years of age, right? Just before my third birthday in 1973, Ireland took on Wales in Llanelli in Wales, and they won by a score of 3 goals to 2, right? So the history of women's soccer is very young in Ireland, and it's also a history of struggle. As you mentioned there, the Republic of Ireland women's team, Anya Gorman, Louise Quinn, Emma Byrne, Stephanie Roach, and Stephen McGuinness from the Irish Football Players Association, the professional body that they have to represent their interests, is basically the players' union. After years and years and years of the players being mistreated, underpaid, not paid at all, having, as you mentioned, to hand back their tracksuits, like their sweats. They had to hand them back in the toilets of Dublin Airport. They used to share them with the boys under 19 team. Of course, there was no kit that was tailored for the female shape. It was
Mm.
all taken off the men's peg kind of thing, right? And it just that was just the end of it. I remember one time when there's a per diem which is paid out. Basically, that's a little thing that you get. It's a little bit of cash in hand, walking around money. And I think it was like around about 40 euros a day. So I don't know what that is in Canadian dollars. I'll put it this way, right? It's not a lot, right? And the Football Association of Ireland said, oh, we're not going to be able to pay that anymore because we don't have the money, right? Now, we need to zoom out a little bit because not only was Ireland a very Catholic and a very segregated country along gender lines, the Football Association of Ireland is one among the worst run organizations anywhere in the world. And at times it still is, right? It's run by vested interests within the game, often from the schoolboy game, because that's where the
Mhm.
base of power is, the schoolboy clubs in Ireland. And it was just a disaster. So the women had to go to such lengths just to be treated like a team.
Wow, I was not quite aware that the first game happened in your lifetime, which again tells you of not to call you, a little bit more on a certain age
It's
gap,
entirely
but
okay. Our mutual friend Alina Ruprecht calls me Woso Gandalf, so it's fine. I got the beard. I'm old. That's okay. I'm at peace with that, my friend.
but that does tell you, like you mentioned, of how young Irish women's football is. That has come a long way for a team that, again, was always fighting. And again, most recently in 2017. Do you think there was a moment where mentalities changed? Or, I mean, that moment could have still not happened yet, and we're waiting for mentalities to change. But was there a switch where the federation or the social public, I guess, around the team actually noticed a bit of potential and they were like, right, let's give them the opportunity at least to see what they've got.
I think that happened in 2017 when they went to Liberty Hall. It's a big building in the center of Dublin. That was where they held that press conference. And
Mm,
that Liberty Hall is basically, it's the home of unions there. It's built by the unions. It's where they have their offices. And it's, if you think of anything to do with organized labor in Ireland, you think of Liberty Hall and the theatre that's there and that. And when they did that, and what really got people was that image of Louise Quinn or Stephanie Roach or whoever it was at the time getting changed in a bathroom in Dublin Airport into a borrowed tracksuit that they had for a week or 10 days or 2 weeks of camp and then having to hand it back. And then I think the Irish public just went, it didn't matter how misogynistic they naturally were inclined to be. They just went, ah, that's not right. We can't do that anymore. Okay. We may not want to hear from them. We may not want to see them on live TV. We may not want to see them on the sports pages of our newspapers. But hell, we can give them a tracksuit at least. And
mm,
that was the turning point. Now, I don't want to have the Hollywood ending yet because I don't think we're there yet. I believe that there's
mhm,
so much more left to do for the game. But that really focused the mind of Irish people. And at the same time, that was a period of great social change in Ireland. So that's a Catholic conservative religious ethos that existed for my entire upbringing. When I went to school, over 90% of the schools in Ireland were controlled by the Catholic Church, and their
mm,
ethos was sort of, imprinted both on us and the girls at the same age, right? But that was changing. So the Irish public had voted for divorce. They had voted to allow abortion in certain cases, and they'd also voted for same-sex marriage. I think it was the first country in the world to do so by popular vote, right? And these are things that in 1980 or 1985 or 1990, when the Irish men played their first organized tournaments, when they played in like the Euros in '88 and
right.
Italia '90 on the men's side, we could never have imagined the social change that has happened at that time. And the girls in green sort of surfed on that a little bit. I think they really timed that well. At
Mm,
the same time, as I wish they had never been forced to do that, because how humiliating is that, Mariam? How humiliating is it to be told you can represent your country, but you're not even worth, a tracksuit worth $100 and you have to give it back so we can share it with somebody else. At the same time as the CEO of the organization was living in a house that was being paid for by the organization and he was earning more than the prime minister, more than the president of the country at that time. So there was a huge change that happened at that point. But there's a tendency when we look at moments of watershed moments like that to think that the work is done once we qualified for the World Cup. And what I've been trying to say, and why I was so disappointed I didn't get to Australia and New Zealand this year for the World Cup, is had
mm,
I gone there to cover the tournament, my point would have been, yes, this is great, but this is not the end. Okay,
mhm.
this is the beginning of where we were supposed to be 20 years ago. And that's the work that's still left to be done for the Irish women's national team. And indeed, the work that has to be done on their behalf because
Yeah.
they've done enough of it already.
I think it's always interesting to see how the game has those switches and I guess changes parallel to social change, like you mentioned. And I'm glad you brought up the World Cup qualification because that was a historic moment that again could have happened 20 years ago, shall or had they not had all these obstacles to overcome. But talking about that game against Scotland, it was a huge game, an incredible goal. I feel like people go back and probably watch that on their 2023, 2022 highlights of the World Cup. But that moment when they qualified for the World Cup, they were going to the World Cup. What was the reaction from them? Because I think I saw the reaction from the general audience of people being very happy for the team. But from Ireland, was there a bit of a reaction or was it even kind of upsetting that it was a little bit too quiet from Ireland?
The reaction to that was huge, and there's an awful lot of factors that play into that. And one of the main ones was that the goal was scored by Amber Barrett. Okay, Amber Barrett comes from County Donegal, which is in the northwest of Ireland, right? So
Mm,
if you go to Amber Barrett's home village and you keep going, the next stop is Canada. right? That's how far north and west it is in the country, right? There's nothing between there and where you're sitting right now. And just a few days prior to that game, there was an explosion in the at a gas station in the village of Creasla where her grandparents live, right? And
Mhm.
she had spent all her summers there. She knew people who had been killed, and it was just an accident. It was no terror attack. It was nothing like that. It was just an accident in a gas
Yeah.
station. The gas station blew up, and some local people were killed. And this was a huge story in Ireland. And it has, as you mentioned, social change and tragedy often go hand in hand in
Mhm.
Ireland. The day we beat Italy at the USA 94 in the Men's World Cup, there was a terrible gun attack in Northern Ireland, one of the last major sectarian killings up there. So even our football memories are often tinged with that sense of tragedy and of misery and of sorrow. But there's nothing that brings Irish people together like either success or tragedy. So when Amber scored that goal, and it was an amazing thing as well because her first touch was with her left foot, and I've said it to her at the past, going, "You're never going to have a touch with your left foot that good again." And she loves to think of it because it was like such a big thing for her to go from being somebody who had played at an amateur level in Ireland, because players, they get paid now, but it's not you can't live a
Yeah.
professional life on that. You either have to study or work. It's still that way for most girls. But for Amber to go to Germany and to go through what she had done, during the COVID pandemic, she was extremely lonely there. She couldn't get out of Germany. She was training in a local park one day, she told me, and a German person shouted at her to go home because she was just trying to stay fit and stay ready for whenever football was going to come back again. And Amber is such a fighter. She's such a battler. She embodies everything that we are. And then for her to score that goal, and immediately she started to point to the black armband that they were wearing on the sleeves of their shirts, on the left
Hmm.
arms. She pointed to that to remember the people in Creasla. In her grandparents' village. And that was a hugely emotional thing. And it was a tremendously dignified thing for her to do. And Katie
Mm.
McCabe came over and she got it straight away because Katie's as smart as a whip. She understood that this moment wasn't about her, it wasn't about Amber. This was about all of Ireland. And I can't think of anything more beautiful than what Amber Barrett did for our country that night.
It is one goal that did send them to the World Cup, but it's a goal that wrote so much history and wrote such a huge story around it. And again, for Amber Barrett, I feel like people who followed her career closely before that World Cup, it's been a huge up and down for her. And so for her to have that moment, it was just beautiful. Next thing you know, they're heading into the World Cup. They had a few friendlies beforehand, which I think the double friendly against the US was super fun, but also great preparation for them. It was coined that they were in the group of death, which is the group of death. It was a very, very tough group to be in. But I think they will be remembered for that Olympico goal against Canada because it makes highlight reels, not just for the World Cup, but just football, women's football in general. Let's talk a little bit about the World Cup. Obviously, not. I mean, I don't know. Was it exactly what they were looking for? I mean, they got their point. They got some pretty, really good, I guess, gritty performances. That first performance against Australia, and I think you mentioned it as well. It was a little bit of an inexperience from the backline to give away that penalty. Had they had a little bit more experience, they could have walked away with a point from a 0-0 draw. But that overall World Cup, I think they walked away with a lot of positives, including that Olympico goal. How was it? How did you assess it for them?
I think in general the assessment has to be that it was brilliant, right? Katie
Mm.
McCabe scoring the first goal for Ireland. It doesn't get any better than that, right? Doing it against Canada. I felt for you. I felt for the wonderful Harji Joe Hall there in Vancouver, one of my best friends. It was an amazing experience for Ireland. But Mariam, I can't help feeling that we didn't do as well as we could have done. I feel we left something on the table, right? And last night at the game, I was down at the Hecken Chelsea game, the Champions League, and I was going down at halftime to interview one of the Hecken players for the Zone. So we're doing these sideline interviews.
Yeah.
And as I ran down from my position to go do that, I met Tony Gustafsson, who's the coach of Australia.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, I haven't seen him since the World Cup, and he didn't know me very well beforehand. I know his assistant, Jens Fjellstrom, very well. I
Mm.
was going, Tony, you stay right there. I want to talk to you later on, because I've been trying to find out for them what their idea of Ireland was, both before and after we played the game. And
Hmm.
exactly as you say, I think Ireland really should have exploited Australia's nerves at being the host nation in the opening game, right? Norway played New Zealand, then Ireland played Australia. If there's ever a time that the Australians were going to be nervous, that the Matildas were going to be nervous, it was on that night. And we saw it. And yet, Vera Pauw's tactics with this team, and this sometimes happens with Irish teams,
Hmm.
especially when coaches come in from abroad, they look at them and they go, okay, maybe you're not technically good enough. We had some players who had either just been turned pro or they were still playing in the domestic league. With
Yeah.
some players who'd been injured. You know, there's some players, Leanne Kiernan didn't even make the
Mm,
squad because she wasn't fit enough. Stephanie Roach, who scored that Pushkas nominated goal a few years ago, she wasn't taken along there. Ruisha Littlejohn, she was also injured. So we had a
mhm.
bunch of players who were like, you know, maybe not at their absolute limit, you know. But I still think that we should have gone out there with more ambition because I think that we should have beaten Canada. And that's no offense to you or to Sink or to any of the great people in Canadian
Yeah.
soccer, Adriana Leone. Like, you know, it was a great game. But Ireland were really, really good in the first half.
Hmm.
And then they sat back in the second. And Nigeria, that was the final nail in the coffin for me because they were there to be beaten, right?
Mm.
Nigeria are one of those teams who are, when they're on their game, they are one of the best teams in the world, right? But when they're not feeling it, you can take them. And it's not
Yeah.
the first time I've seen them come out and put in a kind of performance where they go for the individual thing. Like they're a little bit loose. They just play a little bit loose within themselves. And
Mm.
Ireland really should have won that game. So I'm actually quite disappointed results wise. But I think that we can't blame the players for that because they're told to go out there. You know, I remember saying to a guy who played in the midfield for Ireland many years ago under Giovanni Trapattoni, who was like
Mm.
famously conservative Italian coach, who actually said these players aren't good enough for me to play any sort of expansive football. And he told this central midfielder who has to remain nameless because he told me this in confidence. He said when Trapattoni took over, he told me, "I don't even care if you never see the opposition goal, right? I don't care if you never cross your own halfway line. You don't let anything go through the back four." And Vera Pauw's way of setting up Ireland with five across the back, killing that space that in women's football in particular, we love to find that space between the
Mm.
centre back and the full back. Actually, Hecken did it last night for their goal absolutely brilliantly. And who was it? Only Clarissa
A
Larisi
Canadian.
who scored that goal. There you
Yeah.
go. So, and I spoke to her about that. Actually, she was the one I spoke to at halftime in that interview. But she told me, it's like that
Yeah.
space in Woso, that's where you go for. So Ireland really wanted to defend that. But then we had the problem of Katie McCabe at left back. You need Katie further up the field. Denise
Yeah.
O'Sullivan, you have to let her break the lines. You had Kira Carusa running up front. You had, you know, there's Heather Payne was up there.
Mm.
I really think that we needed to look at ourselves and that we needed to have confidence. I've said before, and you can go back over my time, I honestly do not care about results. I do not care if it's 1-0 to Canada or 1-0 to Ireland. I do not care.
Mhm.
Show me something. Show me courage. Show me creativity. Show me heart and show me fire and show me spirit. And I will
Mm.
take that over any trophy. Go out there and make me proud and make yourself proud and make the country proud. That to me is what international soccer is all about, right? That's what Canada did when they won in a penalty shootout against Sweden. They wanted it more. They had the heart and the grit and the desire more so than what the Swedes did on that night in
Mm.
Tokyo.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to see. And that's why I feel that Ireland they just left it a little bit on the table. And you know, I think if you
Yeah.
spoke to some of the players, you know, as well, they'd probably say the same thing.
It did feel like every after both the Australia game and the Canada game, because honestly, I think going into halftime to that Canada game, I would very confidently tell you n barely any Canadians thought there was going to be a comeback. And a lot of Canadians thought we're losing this one because Ireland in that first half could have probably been 2 or 3 nil up easily. So that game you left, I think, from an Irish perspective, knowing that there's could have been a little bit more. Let's touch on a little bit of on Katie McCabe because I think not only was she absolutely massive in the World Cup, but she's been massive before the World Cup and I think after the World Cup now in the Nations League. She's been I don't know, you call her like an Irish icon, the face of the women's national team. I mean, she has pretty much exploded and rightfully so. How important is it to have a role model like Katie McCabe for the young Irish girls? And we know she has a young sister also following in her footsteps. She's been featured in a few interviews. But Katie McCabe, it almost feels like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not been a role model like her in women's football for Irish youth to look at.
Yeah, I think in terms of personality, maybe we could say that there has been, you know, Olivia O'Toole and Emma
Yeah.
Byrne, but nobody has transcended the sport the way that Katie McCabe has, right? If you talk about women's soccer in Ireland now, the first thing you're going to end up talking about is Katie McCabe and the greatness of Katie McCabe, not just as a player, not just as a defender, not just that left foot, not just the Olympico, right? But
Mm.
she has become the spokesperson for this generation of female players. And and she's so beloved, okay, because Katie is gay. She's not afraid to speak her mind. She'll take on the press. She was
Yeah.
disappointed when, in a pre World Cup press conference before the game against France, I think in a pre World Cup friendly. And by the way, you said what you said about the USA friendlies was exactly right.
Mm,
They saw, the Sweden and Norway, they'd taken sort of easy friendlies before tournaments before and then not performed. And
mm,
Ireland took some really difficult games, which really stood to them when they got to the World Cup. But before the France game, an article came out in The Athletic about Vera Pauw, and Vera had kind of provoked that
yeah.
because she was being asked about what happened in our time in North American soccer. And Vera wrote back to the journalists, says, "Oh, what about this and what about that?" And then they turned the spotlight on her. Boom. And then the article came out just before the France game because obviously the Athletic aren't dumb. They know that Irish people and people in women's soccer are going to be reading this kind of thing around now. And all the questions at the press conference were about this article and nothing was about the game. And Katie called out at that press conference. She called out the media. She's gone, "Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for giving me this chance to talk about the World Cup." Now I know behind the scenes that the relationships with Vera Pauw were never easy, and especially not for Katie, because Katie's not the kind of person, she'll do anything you ask her, but you have to explain it to her and you have to get her to buy in. And if you don't, forget about it, which led to what
Yeah.
happened against Nigeria when she was asking for Sinead Farrelly to be taken off.
Yeah.
But Katie has transcended the game in such a way that, she is like, I was just in Dublin there at the weekend to see my parents before Christmas, and her
Yeah.
face is on every commercial. It's on every bus stop. It's everywhere because of the celebrity that she has become. And then she backs it up with her performances for Arsenal, and she backs it up with the performances for the women's team. So when they came back and Vera Pauw had left and they went into the Nations League, she knew the pressure that was on her. And she did something that's very unusual in soccer in terms of she took responsibility. It's often very, very difficult for one player in that situation to take control of not just like of a whole tournament, which is what the Nations League was. And she just ruled. Like, I mean, she didn't put a foot wrong. And she scored so many goals. She had so many assists. And she set the tone for what was happening because she was sort of saying to the other girls, a bit like after 2017, she was a little bit younger then and didn't
Hmm.
have the voice in the locker room that she has now. But she said, "Hey, Vera's gone now. We kind of got what we wanted. We got a new coach in Eileen
Yeah.
Gleeson. She's somebody who listens to us. She understands us. But now it's up to us because people thought that, oh, it's player power and Vera got into the World Cup and they should be grateful and that because even if they are sort of revered much more now than they were previously, there's still a lot of people who would like to take those girls down, who'd
Hmm.
like to say they're divas and they're arrogant and this kind of thing. And they never miss an opportunity to go at that. So
They love
Katie
it.
understood that with girls. Yeah, we got to go out there and we got to do it. And they did. And that has made, and we'll break a little news here on your podcast, right? I have a podcast called The Global Gale, and the intended audience is 70 million Irish people of Irish heritage around the world, many of them in Canada and south of the border there and in Australia. And this year, the Athlete of the Year award was between two Katies, right? It was between Katie McCabe and the boxer Katie Taylor, former Olympic champion,
Yeah.
two-weight professional boxing champion, the greatest athlete that Ireland has ever produced, right? In any other year, Katie McCabe doesn't win this, right? In any other year, Katie Taylor walks away with it because she just won. She became a
Hmm.
two-weight world champion about 2 weeks back, right?
Yeah.
But this year it's Katie McCabe. Katie McCabe wins the award for Athlete of the Year because of the fact that not only did she carry Ireland to a World Cup, she kept them in the World Cup and she carried them beyond that and into the public consciousness. And it's hard to see anybody who can hold a candle to that in the year 2023.
I think, and I've had a few conversations with people when I'm talking about the Irish women's national team, and the first person they mention is Katie McCabe. Like her name has become synonymous with Ireland, and that just speaks to the impact that she has. But I want to talk a little bit about the impacts on the nation. What do you hope that this World Cup and this year does to the teams and the league that there is in Ireland and the youth academies and I think just women's football in Ireland in general. What do you hope to see comes out of this into the 2023 year? Because I think this is a year that kids and many players in the future are going to be coming back to and reading plenty on it and watching all the highlight reels, which is great because Katie McCabe scored a lot of good goals to come back and watch.
Yeah, we got a whole lot of YouTube to watch there over Christmas,
Yeah.
But if now, you know me, Mario, I hate drawing parallels to the men's game, but I have to do
Yeah.
it now in the Irish context, right? Everybody in Ireland talks about Italian 90. It was the first time that we made it to the World Cup, and it was very, very similar to the Women's World Cup. We went there with a squad that was technically limited, but they had loads of heart. And we went out there and we got to the quarterfinals where we lost to Italy in Rome, right? But that was a transcendent moment for soccer in Ireland because we have other sports. We have Gaelic football, which is like a mix of Olympic handball and soccer. We have hurling, which is like a kind of lacrosse type sport that we play with sticks and helmets and that. But
Yeah.
we have rugby, which is another huge participatory sport. But what they have done is that they have firmly established the Irish women's soccer team in the mind of the public as something to see. They are now an event. As Irish people, we love sporting events, especially if the shirt is green, right? We love to go and watch our rugby team play. We just had a Rugby World Cup and everybody followed them. People were like commuting over and back to Paris to watch the games in France the whole time, right? We love our soccer teams. We love our underage soccer teams too. There's still the structural disaster area that is the Football Association of Ireland, right? I have no expectations of them whatsoever. They are beyond hopeless, the whole lot of them, right? Every time you see a new dawn, somebody pulls the
Hmm.
curtains and it's just black dark again. I don't expect anything from them. What I would like to see is I would like to see a fully professional league where girls can get paid, and not just paid, but well paid, okay? I spoke to Chloe Mustaki there recently, who's now at Bristol City in the Women's Super League. Chloe is an extremely well-educated woman, like, you know, well more educated than me. She could make way more money. She was in recruitment and financial services
Yeah.
before. She can pick a good banker out of a lineup easy, like, you know, and she could probably make way more money doing that. But she wants to play for Ireland and she wants to
Mm.
play professional soccer. But the point will come where she's going to go, hey, you know, am I really prepared to sacrifice this money and that kind of thing? Because, you know, maybe she might want to have a family later. The clock is ticking on all these things. And, you know, she could be
Hmm.
building up a pension, et cetera, et cetera. So this is very difficult. So I want to see them put in a situation where either domestically or in England, or in Germany or in Belgium, like Amber Barrett. Some of the players have gone abroad. Louise Quinn played for
Yeah.
Fiorentina, as did Stephanie Roach, you know, Stephanie Zambra, she's now known since she got married, you know. I would love to see a sustainable league in Ireland with crowds of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people going to see. I would love to see the women's national team move permanently from Tala. Tala has been a great place to go. You know, we can get 6 to 8,000 fans. I've seen
Yeah.
many games there. When Ireland played against Sweden, they lost narrowly 1-0. Louise Quinn scored an own goal. And the Swedish girls were telling me afterwards, they couldn't believe they got out of there with a win. It was just so close. And then it was 1-1 here in Gothenburg, and they went, okay,
Yeah.
we got to take these girls in grade seriously, you know. I would love to see them make the move to the Aviva Stadium. I would love to see 50,000 Irish people turn up every time they're going to play a game. Doesn't matter who it's against. And now with progression to the Nations League Group A, that's going to be so tough because that's the top European teams. Germany, England, Spain, Norway, Sweden are playing a qualifier to stay in there. You know, you got some really good teams in there. But that's, you know, that's where they have to be. But to do that, we need to take the next step now. We need to have the players playing not just in the Women's Super League. And no offense to Chloe Mustaki, who plays at Bristol City, or kind of second from bottom now, if I remember rightly. We
Yeah.
need them at Arsenal. We need them at Chelsea. We need them at Barcelona. We need them at Bayern Munich. You know, we need to take those kids and put them in like a hothouse, these kids, so that they
Hmm.
really get their skills up to speed. I was watching Chelsea last night and the players they have, and like Erin Cuthbert got player of the game, and she lost in that playoff to Ireland, you know, and didn't even make the World Cup.
Yeah.
But the way, you know, she can win the ball and just hit it straight out to the wing instinctively, doesn't think, the speed of thought, the speed of touch, everything is there, you know. And that's what we have to aim for. As I say, I have zero faith in the Football Association of Ireland to deliver that. And that means then that we have to do something about it as fans, as coaches, as journalists. We have to see if we can pave the way for these girls to get to bigger and better leagues and to gain
Hmm.
more experience at these things.
Do you have a favorite moment from the Irish women's national team from this year? I know it's a tough question. I
Oh,
feel like there's been so many moments, but is there one that stands out with you and one that you'll be telling kids in the future back in 2023, this was the moment?
I was talking to Courtney Brosnan recently. She's up at Everton and she's a
Yeah.
brilliant goalkeeper. The big thing for me was hearing the national anthem when they played against Australia for the first time, right? But the more I think about this World Cup and the more I put it in perspective, do you know what shines for me, Mariam? Is Sinead Farrelly. Okay.
Mm.
Sinead Farrelly is, I could watch Sinead Farrelly. If she was playing out in my garden, I'd watch her, you know, until she got tired and went home with a ball, I'd watch her play football. Incredibly intelligent, creative, playful footballer. Just the kind of baller that I absolutely love. She was out of the game for 6, 7, 8 years. She just retired
Mhm.
because she had been sexually exploited by a coach when she played in the NWSL. Disappeared, vanished from the game, then came back. And all of a sudden in February, they called her into the Irish team because her father was born in Ireland. She was called in, right? With Sinead Farley, of course, she's going to get in there. Came in, absolutely brilliant. Only had an hour on her legs. But her redemption arc, we're right back to our Hollywood script here, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant to see her play, to see her just get on the ball. I would ban every player in the world from doing back heels in international football, apart from Sinead Farrelly, because the ball actually gets there. And then
Yeah.
she goes back to her club and she wins the NWSL with Gotham. And that to me is everything in women's football, because here is a woman who was abused and who was forced out of the game, and the game was made a hostile environment for her, and yet she still came back and she was able to experience all of this. And that's Katie McCabe's goal, the national anthem when it was played there against Australia and that kind of thing. There are so many moments, but those moments to me, Mariam, they will always be, very, like, I will always cherish those moments, but they'll mean an awful lot less if we don't take this and make it into something much, much bigger than we've ever seen before.
If that's not the Hollywood story ending every episode should have, I don't know what it is. Because her story, and you said it, the redemption arc that she's had is absolutely just, it sends shivers down your spine reading about it. And the whole NWSL championship and going with it to Gotham is just, it really is, it was the cherry on top, but it was fought for, and it was, her story is one of resilience, and to come back into the game and, like you mentioned, get called up out of nowhere is something that is going to be so, so special. So that is a highlight story that I think is one to definitely kind of give the spotlight to. Phil, unfortunately, we're kind of falling short a little bit on time here. You highlighted your podcast a little bit here, but you do a little bit more than just your podcast. I know folks are going to be headed your way to read and listen to you. Where can they find you?
I think the best place to go at the moment is probably Instagram and Threads, because Europeans are now allowed on Threads. So you'll find me at Philip Eblana. That's Philipeblana. And Threads, I don't know if you're on it yet yourself, Mario, but it's lovely because, the corner of Woto that we occupy on Twitter, that's still fine, right? But the rest of Twitter is a bit of a mess, or X as it's now called. So yeah, I think we'll find me on Threads and on Instagram. And I'm always happy to continue these discussions with you and with all the great people that listen to this podcast too.
Absolutely. An honor. Always fantastic to chat with you here. I'll leave Phil's links down below, as well as Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Threads, and the podcast. Because if you're not listening, you're missing out on so much. Even if you're not Irish and you're not somewhere living in Ireland, you still you'd find a lot of the conversations interesting. Phil, thank you so much for joining me here today. And you know what? I'm excited to talk about the Irish girls next year. Hopefully, maybe when they qualify for the Euros, because that would be some scenes.
Oh, let's book another conversation in January. We get that one done.
You got it.